What happened to Agent Georgia? The question that has plagued the minds of Red vs. Blue fans for years. So, let's go through everything. Every bit of information we have on Georgia, which honestly is not much, but it's all in an effort to see if we can really figure out what happened to Agent Georgia. In the main series, Georgia has only been mentioned a few times, and in Season 14, we actually get to see him with a handful of other freelancers. Let's presume that everything that Georgia has appeared in is canon. So, where can we begin with this? Given the no information we have on him, the earliest we can place him is during Season 14. Yes, he joined Project Freelancer at some point, he probably went on a few missions, but we don't see that. And quite frankly, even in Season 14, he's just standing around and talking a big game, being full of himself. Chronologically speaking, that is the first time we see him, ever. Now, if you've only watched the main series, the next piece would seem as though he just died in a jetpack accident. But thanks to Halo 4 Spartan Ops, we are given the next chronological piece to the Georgia puzzle. In Spartan Ops, there are Red vs. Blue Easter eggs you can activate when you shoot a radio. On the mission Seize the Power, when you shoot the radio, you hear this.
Cool, jetpacks! That will help us get on that ship, where my name is an Agent Georgia.
The events moments before Georgia took off with his jetpack. Now, he does sound different. When speaking to the triplets, he appeared full of himself. An angry attitude that, if given time, probably would have classified him as a bad guy.
Whoever did the voice acting for that sounds like a dickhead.
But this time around, he seems different. He has a more cheery optimism in his voice. It didn't help him, but there was a change. Not much information is given in each scenario we see him in, so what we do have to do is a lot of presuming. So since there were other freelancers that knew what happened to Georgia, we can presume that during this transmission, there were other freelancers there with him. Also, this is presumably the accident that flung Georgia into space. After he and all the other freelancers used their jetpacks, Georgia, as stated in the main series, failed to follow course correction, and thus flung into deep space. Meanwhile, all the freelancers that were there then presumed he was dead. But that is still not the last time we see him. In a Season 10 deleted scene, we see Utah monkeying about, during which Georgia pops in. It is clear that these events follow the jetpack incident, so why wouldn't Utah try and help Georgia? The two seemed as though they were on good terms. Now before you say it wasn't canon, the scene was clearly for fun. Well, what's to say that the Halo 4 bit wasn't canon? We're trying to build a theory here on facts that are hardly there. So to exclude one scene over another isn't quite fair to those who believe it is canon. So you can't be picky as to what you accept as canon and what you don't in terms of this theory. So that presumably is the last time we see or hear of Georgia. That is presumably the chronological order of events. So what happened next? Well, let's talk about a few different ideas floating around out there. Let's start with some less popular ones. The first being, is Agent Georgia Private Palomo? So how did these events end up unfolding? Well, some people believe that after Agent Georgia floated off, he ended up landing on the planet of Chorus, and kind of just going with the flow. Now, I'm also not trying to tell a story that isn't there. I don't want to tell you a fan fiction rather than a theory. The only difference is, I guess how you label it. It's like a game of Mad Libs. People are filling in the blanks with what they want. But back to Palomo, Georgia. One of the most obvious connections you can make between the two is their voices. Carrie Shawcross, the Dragon Face himself. Because Agent Georgia is voiced by Carrie, and Palomo is also voiced by Carrie, with next to no change in his voice between the two characters, this led people to believe that Private Palomo and Georgia are one and the same. But by that logic, Sarge and Doc would be the same, and Church, Lopez, and Vic would be the same, which they clearly are not. So let's step aside from their voice actors and now go on to their characters. It was stated that Palomo has kind of experienced war from when he was very little, and because of that, he's very desensitized to that. Much like an elite soldier should be to violence. That, coupled with Palomo's want to look cool in front of everyone, only to inevitably fail, is one of the ways people try to draw the connection between the two. Using a jetpack's course correction doesn't exactly look cool in front of everyone, so in an effort to show his skill with a jetpack, he gets flung into space, only to eventually end up in Chorus. But still, I'm just walking the line of telling you guys a fanfiction. Now, another less popular idea is that Jenkins is Agent Georgia. Now, if you didn't know who Utah was, chances are you have no idea who Jenkins is. Jenkins is yet another character who hasn't technically appeared in the main series. We see his name in the monitor when Flowers trips, but technically that's about it. Like Agent Florida, people believe that Georgia changed his name. Flowers and Florida have the full sound, and Jenkins and Georgia have that J sound. That, coupled with Jenkins and Georgia being seen in light green armor, now you might be thinking that the voices between the two were very different, but technically speaking, Jenkins appeared in a memory of Church's.
Was I there, Church? No, Jacobs, you weren't there. I don't know why. I guess I just forgot about you. Sorry. Oh well. Maybe next time.
He technically wasn't there, and the thing about memory as it begins to go away is the first thing you tend to forget about people is their voice. It's hard to remember what they sounded like, so Church's memory could have just been that, a memory. He remembers him, just not everything about him. This is honestly not a bad idea as to who Georgia is, but it's one of the less popular ones because we have a character who has only appeared once or twice, Jenkins, being compared to a character who has only appeared once or twice, Georgia. When two such anonymous characters are compared, it, on paper, seems very viable, but we just don't have enough information on Jenkins at the moment. Now the most popular, of course, being Caboose. It always wraps back around to Caboose being a freelancer, doesn't it? People are wanting it so bad. They don't even care who he is as long as he can be tied to it. And you know what the great thing is now about this theory? One of people's biggest arguments as to why Caboose couldn't be Georgia, or a freelancer at the very least, was they said he was too stupid. But now, thanks to the triplets, that's no longer an argument. When you compare Caboose to Iowa, Caboose might as well be Dr. Halsey. That was a Halo reference for those of you who didn't get it. Basically, she's smart. Iowa didn't exactly show much skill when it came to much. He was a vehicle destroyer much like Caboose, but Caboose has shown strength, aim, and intelligence from time to time. All qualifications that would have allowed him to be a freelancer. Something I couldn't have said pre-season 14. Actually, probably all of the Reds and Blues could have been freelancers after seeing the triplets. But sometimes you have to try and look past the narrative and try to connect the dots. Why include the triplets? They could have been any three awful soldiers, much like we saw in Gray vs. Gray or Orange is the New Red. They could have been any group of soldiers, but these three ended up being freelancers. Why? Perhaps it was to subtly tell you not every freelancer was a super elite soldier. You can be near brain dead and somehow still be a freelancer. That, and they were shipped to the middle of nowhere, much like how the Alpha was sent to Blood Gulch. But Caboose was sent to Blood Gulch. He didn't fall out of the sky as a floating Georgia would've. And the theory here is that Caboose is Georgia. That would mean post-jetpack incident, Georgia would have had to have been collected and then reshipped to Blood Gulch. Remember that Utah and Georgia scene? It looked as though Georgia just refloated off into oblivion. But what if he didn't? What if Utah was so calm in that situation because Georgia was being recollected? Georgia, like the triplets, was then shipped off in an effort to help in the process of protecting the Alpha. No one's looking for Georgia because they think he's dead. You don't look for a dead man. Now that also might raise the question, who would be looking for him? Well, in terms of those searching for freelancers, there was of course the meta. He was hunting down freelancers left and right. But you might say, he was hunting them for their AI. Georgia, as far as we know, didn't have an AI. True, but there still is one unaccounted for AI. Chances are it was probably destroyed at this point, but if we go back to season 10, when we see Sigma combining all the AI, there is one up there that we've never seen. We have Theta, Iota, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Sigma, Omega, but then there is Z. We have never met a soldier or have been told about this AI. So if Georgia really did have Z and didn't want to be hunted down by the meta, then he would have had to go into hiding so he wouldn't be killed by the meta. There's also the argument, well, if Caboose is Georgia, why doesn't Wash or Carolina recognize him? Now, recognizing someone based on their armor is a ridiculous statement to make. But here's the weirdest thing I find about Wash. He has no idea what happened to Georgia. Now originally my thought was, Wash never met Georgia. Georgia's incident happened before Wash had a chance to meet him at the very least. But in season 14, we see Wash and Georgia in the same group, which would mean they are acquainted enough with one another to go into battle as a group. So Wash knew Georgia, but he presumably disappeared one day by this logic. Now, as far as Carolina, she actually knows more about Georgia than Wash because she knows what happened to Georgia. Because she is the one warning everyone not to end up like him.
You don't want to end up like Georgia.
Wait, what happened to Georgia?
Nobody knows. They never found him.
So clearly both Wash and Carolina know Georgia, but as stated, recognizing someone based on their armor is ridiculous. Both Wash and Carolina have shown their faces to the other freelancers, so it's not impossible that Georgia has also shown his face to the others. But for them to recognize him, they would have to see his face. If he is a character we have already met, all he needs to do to stay anonymous is to keep his helmet on. Now that would mean he wants to be anonymous. If he does recognize the other freelancers, why isn't he telling them of him? You could say that he's still in hiding from the meta, but that only works in the Palomo case because Caboose was there when the meta died. But once again, that brings up more hypotheticals. If Georgia is a character we've already met, it doesn't mean he's not telling them who he is. There's once again a multitude of different explanations. Amnesia, memory loss, he was in space for who knows how long. As seen in Caboose, a lack of air ends up harming the brain even further, so Georgia's brain might have been damaged due to a lack of oxygen while in space. A concussion, multiple personality disorder if it also came down to it. Literally countless different explanations that can be applied to this what happened to Georgia Mad Libs. But all of that is dependent for Georgia being someone we've already met. Georgia could still be alive and going by the name and armor, Georgia. People believe what they want when it comes to Georgia, and because it has gained such a large following as to this question, chances are you'll never actually get an answer. What happened to Georgia? You'll never know. You ever wonder why we're here? No real answer. What do the Reds and Blues faces look like? These are the questions that flood the minds of Red versus Blue fans, and because Rooster Teeth knows that, they'll never tell us. They'll tease us till the day we die, but a true answer may never come. So what do you think happened to Georgia? Is he dead? Is he alive? Is he a character we've already met? Or is he still out there, not yet rediscovered? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe if you're interested in more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one.